Welcome to the show, Mikayla.
Hey, it's nice to be here. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
My favorite question to start off with is what is your sober date?
I actually don't know this off the top of my head. I think it's March 3rd, 2016.
Okay, so you got about a little over 8.5 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's
Coming
awesome.
up 9. Thank you.
Yep, coming up on 9.
Mm-hmm.
So what was going on early March of 2016 to where like you decided to get sober?
So I actually got arrested. So what happened was we were at like the trap house where we all congregated, and the plug needed a ride to this other house, and I went with him. I was the only one that had a car, so I brought him, and I ended up going upstairs with him. And it was like I had text messages that were coming in that were like leave, leave, and I'm just like a nice person, so I was like, no, like I don't want to abandon him here, like whatever. And then not even 5 minutes later, a SWAT team came in, just like knocking on the door. There was coke in front of us, heroin in front of us, syringes, like all of it, the whole 9 yards. But the whole thing was really such a blessing when the SWAT team did show up, because the guy that I had brought there, he had HIV. He's since passed, and I don't know what his plans were, but right before they knocked that door down, that man was taking his pants off, and it was only him and I in that house. So I feel like I'm extremely lucky. It was almost like divine protection of sorts, or a divine intervention.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You almost got lucky. Well, no, not even almost. You did get lucky.
I did extremely.
And who would have thought that getting arrested would straighten you out?
I didn't think it was going to, because I was ready to go get high as soon as I got out. Which I was only there for like I think one night, and so yeah, then I
Where,
had ended
where
up
are you from?
I'm from Massachusetts.
Okay, I used to live up there.
Oh, you did? Where?
I lived in Carver. I lived in Middleborough. I lived in
Harvard?
Plymouth. I lived in New Bedford.
I was born in New Bedford. Hold on, I lost us. Somebody just called me. Okay. I was born in New Bedford, and I grew up in Freetown and New Bedford. I had divorced parents, so I was back and forth. My best friend lived in Carver. I hung out a lot in Middleborough and Tyne. And yeah,
Wait, how
really,
old are you?
I'm 28.
Okay, because I
Mhm.
wasn't sure if you. I didn't go to school in Carver. My
You-
brother went to school in Carver, and my sister went to school in Carver. And you're closer to my sister's age. So if you hung out in Carver, then I wonder if you know my sister, um,
Right.
Jessica Jessica Dilks.
Dilks, Jessica Dilks. I don't think so.
Yeah, she was only there until like 8th grade.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then no.
Yeah, I think she her we they moved. My family moved back to Jersey after my sister's 8th grade,
Yep.
and so you're 28 and you've been sober for 8 years. So you've been sober since you were 20.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So what was it? When did your parents get divorced?
It was 1999, I think. So I was 3.
Okay. Do you have any brothers or sisters with them?
I have one brother between them.
Okay. And is he older or younger than you?
He's 3 years older.
Oh, okay. So they were together for a little bit and then
A little
for a
bit.
little while.
A little bit. They got some years in.
Yeah. And did you have any other siblings that popped up too, or just you and your brother?
They both remarried. I'm gonna put this on Do Not Disturb. Okay, you got that. So they got remarried, both of them. And on my mom's side with my stepdad, he had 2 sons and a daughter. And my dad married his wife, and she has 2 daughters. So then it turned into like 7 of us all of a sudden, and I was the youngest out of all of them.
What
Hmm.
was that? What was that like being the youngest? Were you like,
I was just babied. Like I don't even know if I want to say this on here, but like I didn't know that Santa was not real until like middle school. Like I was so sheltered and just like I don't even know. They just wouldn't tell me anything bad about the world. They were just, for the most part. They just babied me for sure.
Santa wasn't real.
I
Like,
was like, does that mean the Easter Bunny isn't real either? Like, I was so upset. I was so upset.
that's funny. Now, what did you discover first, drugs or alcohol?
Alcohol.
How old were you?
I think I started drinking when I was like about to be or just turned 15.
Okay. I started when I was 12 or 11,
Hmm. Yeah.
but I was
Oh,
pretty young.
yeah, I was young for sure.
Now, who were you drinking with at 15?
My high school friends.
Because you would have been a freshman when you were 15.
I was super young for my grade, so I was a sophomore.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because in Massachusetts, there's not like I grew up in a town where you could walk everywhere. Were you going to parties or was it in the woods?
A lot of house parties, a lot of woods, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I remember in Carver, my brother used to have like parties in the woods.
Yeah, that's about it.
And Middleborough, I wasn't drinking in Middleborough, but I was getting high in Middleborough.
That's so surprising because Middleborough was like the place to drink, like at least for me. But everyone that I knew, it was a good probably group of like 20 people that I was friends with in Middleborough, and they were all around my age. And then of course we had the older friends that got us the alcohol. Um, we were always drinking, always.
Yeah, I lived there. I lived in Middleborough when I was 25.
Okay.
And so like I wasn't there. I didn't live in Carver either until I was 19.
Hmm. So what
So
years were you over in
what's
Middleborough?
that?
What years were you in Middleborough then?
2011. I moved 30 times in 12 years.
Oh my gosh, we're kind
Uh,
of like I've moved. This will be my. I'm moving like tomorrow, so it'll be my 21st time.
really? So you're all over the place too then?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I spanned 5 different states. I'm from South Jersey. I lived in Pennsylvania all over. I lived in Massachusetts all over. I lived in North Carolina and I lived in LA.
Wow.
So I bounced all over the place and through my addiction and through my adult life. And even in sobriety, I moved around a bunch.
Oh yeah, me too. Me too.
So I know what that's like to pick up and move again. Now, so yeah, 2011, I was half the year I was in Middleborough, and then the other half of the year I was in Plymouth.
Oh, okay. I know some people in Plymouth too.
And then I went back to South Jersey where I'm from.
We'll have to scan our mutual friends.
Yeah, yeah. See if we have any matches. We probably do with, especially with doing this show. I met people from Massachusetts also.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in Massachusetts, for sure, that were hit by like the opiate epidemic.
Yeah, there was a whole special, like a documentary that was on HBO that had to do with Cape Cod.
Wow.
I forget what it's called, but it was all about, fentanyl, not even fentanyl. It's about heroin on the Cape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
it's
think
bad.
that was the name, heroin on the Cape, something like that.
I don't even watch TV, so I haven't even heard of it, but I should look into that.
It was out, I want to say like 5-6 years ago, and it was before fentanyl really came around. Like
Mainstream fentanyl, yeah.
yeah, because like I'm from like South Philadelphia area, and it's not far from like Kensington, Philadelphia, where is like the biggest like fentanyl and xylazine. If you don't know what xylazine is, it's horse tranquilizer that people are shooting up these days.
I thought that's what fentanyl was.
Fentanyl, it goes heroin, fentanyl, xylazine.
Okay.
And xylazine is horse tranquilizer, and people are shooting it up all over Philly. And it's like eating away at their body.
Oh my, it's in the opiate family?
Yep.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it's literally for horses.
Yeah,
It's it's to put down a horse, and you're putting it into your body to get high multiple times a day.
yeah, that's insane.
And then once you do xylazine, you can't go back to fentanyl,
Why? It's just
because if you try doing fentanyl, you're still sick.
oh no.
So if you do fentanyl and you start withdrawing, you can do fentanyl and get good again and not be in pain or not like withdrawing. But if you do xylazine and then try to get fentanyl, you're still going to be withdrawn even if you do a big shot of fentanyl.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. And it's making its way across the country right now. I just talked to somebody from Colorado and it just popped up there recently.
Wow.
So, all right, we'll get back on track. You're 15 years old. You're
Mhm.
drinking. You smoking weed yet?
I was just starting. I think I started smoking and drinking around the same time.
Sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
And smoke cigarettes too, or just weed and
Yeah,
drink?
I was smoking Newport 100s by then. And I was also taking like just my friend's adderall because I didn't want to take it. So they were doing a little bit of that too, sophomore year.
Like just taking the Adderall or snorting the Adderall?
I was like in history class, like grinding up the little capsule nugget things, the little, you know what I'm talking about, the beads,
Yep.
um, and just blowing them. And then I was taking them orally, like normal. But I mean, even before this, like freshman year of high school, I was like snorting sugar, like out of packets with the kids. And it wasn't my idea, but I was like, huh, all right. So yeah, the snorting thing definitely fascinated me for sure.
Yeah, I can tell you were. Well, I was addicted to snorting, just as I was the substance I was snorting.
Right. It's like it's almost like an oral fixation, but like a nasal fixation.
And I was addicted to the whole entire process, breaking it up, lining it up, with you get the credit card out and you make it into a perfect line. Like,
It's kind of like it was. I mean, it was like a therapeutic kind of thing because, like, think of like a Zen garden. Like, you know how you just be like sitting there playing with it, or just
yep,
like enrolling. Like, there's rituals.
romanticizing the entire thing. Because
Right.
I've never shot anything, injected anything, but people tell me doing the whole entire setup before you shoot, there you start romanticizing it, and you're addicted to the act of shooting as you are the drug itself.
Hmm.
So I relate a lot to that. Even though I never shot anything, I loved snorting pills, and I did that for a decade.
Wow. Yeah.
9.5 years, but still, I'll call it a decade. When did you get introduced to other drugs?
Um. I was pretty good junior year. I would say the summer after senior year is when I started. Also, actually, not the summer after. It was my senior year around January because my grandmother had passed. And at that point, I was already self medicating with Adderall. And I started using benzos because I was taking way too much Adderall. Um, and yeah, the summer after senior year was when I started getting into the perks more, Xanax more, mostly perks. The only reason I stopped doing Xans though and moved on to perks was because my benzo dealer robbed my house, and that was a whole entire ordeal. I still don't think that like my mom and stepdad believe me that it wasn't me that robbed the house. What happened was he came over with his friends, and like my parents were out in like Florida or something, and we were just like hanging out, smoking weed, like popping Xans, doing what teenagers do. And next thing you know, we woke up. Me and my friend was there as well. We woke up, they were gone. I didn't even notice anything different about the house. It didn't even dawn on me that that could have happened, but they definitely probably planned the whole thing for sure.
Now, and you at that point, you're like, okay, I'm done with Xanax.
Well, we got a restraining order against the guy. So, pretty much.
Yeah. And when you say perks, do you mean like Roxy 30s?
Yeah. 30s.
Yeah, that was my thing.
Mm-hmm.
was 30s for a long time.
Yeah. 30.
When did you get introduced to them? Senior year?
Summer after senior year. I'd already kind of known about them because my ex-boyfriend at the time was in recovery. I guess he's still my ex-boyfriend. But I had recently left that relationship and he was in recovery from it and his friend was using them. So it kind of put the idea in my head to try it out for sure.
And you went jump straight into snorting them, or were you eating them?
Oh, snorting them.
How fast were you hooked?
I said probably like within like a week. Pretty quick. It just became like the thing that I did with my coworker at the time, like after work.
Yeah. So what were you doing for work?
I worked at Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, okay.
I lived in Massachusetts. Like what? Where else is there?
That's true. I didn't think about that. Of course,
Yeah.
you worked at what do they call it? Donkeys?
They call it, yeah, donkeys.
Yeah, I remember. I have a friend who lives in Weymouth that still goes to Dunkin' Donuts every morning at 5 a.m. when she wakes up and smokes a joint in her car after she goes to Dunkin' Donuts. And
Coffee in itself is an addiction, and it's just the whole ritual of going there, driving. Because I've been this person. I go there, I go through the drive-through, I order my coffee that I don't even like. I take like 2 sips of it, and then it just sits in my car. It's like, but I had to do it. I had to do it. Working there made it a lot easier because it was free.
yeah. Now, how long did you work there for?
I worked there for like so long. It was the longest held job that I had at the time. So I started junior, or I think maybe it was senior year that I started, and then I worked at Dunkin', but different locations up until from 2014 to 2016. And in 2016, I moved down to Florida for rehab. Dunkin' was my first job in Florida. Went back to Massachusetts 2 years later, worked at some other Dunkins, ended up being a manager. So altogether, like probably like 5 or 6 years.
You did your time.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So you're out of high school, you're doing Roxy's. Did you ever like escalate from Roxy's?
Yeah, and then I moved on to heroin through another coworker because I would always bring her to her cousin's house, which, as it turns out, it wasn't really her cousin's house. And she was picking up like bundles. This is when, I don't know if they still do it like this, but it was in like those little packets and it had an elastic around it. She always hid them from me. She knew I was using perks, but then I just got really curious and eventually convinced her to let me try it.
And once you did heroin, there was no more going back to perks.
No, I mean, I still wanted a perk every once in a while, for sure. They taste different. The drip is just different.
Yep.
And it's the snorting experience really that the addiction becomes. And every now and again, I guess you could say I treated myself to a perk rather than these little packets of dope.
Were you ever injecting or were you just snorting still?
I started injecting probably like the end of 2014 or the end of 2015, sometime then.
So you were only just snorting, you were only injecting for a few months before you got arrested?
It's probably about 6 months.
Now, had you been arrested before?
No. Mm-mm.
So you're 20 years old and you're the only one with a car, and you decide to go with this guy. Like, why were you hanging out at a trap house?
That's where my friends were. I don't know. It was actually I just started dabbling in like crack. I was really curious about crack, so that's why I went there, because I was like, I want to smoke some. And then we went and we did, and I didn't really like it that much. I'm not gonna lie. And I was looking forward to getting some heroin because I hated how the crack had made me feel. But then I got arrested and that made it worse. So I was sitting in a jail cell, like coming down from crack and withdrawing from heroin. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's a whole lot of different feelings going on.
There's so much happening.
And I have never smoked crack, but from what I've been told, the come down is awful, and that's why you have to consistently just keep smoking it.
Yeah.
So you're going through that mental withdrawal, while also physic. Was that your first time like withdrawing from opiates?
No, I don't think so. I think I might have withdrew like one time, and it was awful. I was like in my bed just like sweating, and yeah, that was like the only time that I really withdrew. I thought that I was a smart drug addict, and like I would never allow myself to run out. So I like was very, very mindful of the fact that like one, too much is going to kill me, and I need to make sure that I have some for tomorrow so that I can still function as a normal person, because I was working 2 jobs for most of it.
Oh, okay. What else were you doing?
I worked at, what is it called, Hannaford's, in the bakery. I hated that job though. Yeah.
Well, no, were you still living with your parents?
No. So at some point during like the whole benzo and heroin deal, like when they collided, I'd gotten in this car chase with another ex-boyfriend that I had, and my school resource officer, who was just like an active deputy on duty that day in my town, like would have arrested me, but instead, since he knew me, he sent me out to like a 72-hour hold type of situation, have me evaluated and everything. Didn't have any charges put on me, but when that happens, my mom was like, I don't know where you're gonna go when you leave here. And I was just had turned 18, I think. I might have even been 17 when that happened. And I ended up moving in with my uncle in the middle of Taunton, and Taunton is like the worst place. I was just getting closer to drugs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you might as well live in Brockton.
Right. Like it was, yeah, destined to fail.
Yeah, the wonderful South Shore. Now, what do you mean you were in a car chase? We kind of skipped right over that.
I forgot about it. I was on benzo, so I mean, easy to forget those kind of things. But I don't know. We were on our way to get dope, and then he pissed me off or whatever, and I took his hat and like threw it out my window. But then I felt bad, so I went to go find the hat, and they took my car to go get dope, and then they never gave me any. So then he was in his friend's car, and I ended up like just chasing the shit out of him. And yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was just a car chase between 2 civilians. It wasn't like with the police. But the
Oh,
police
I see.
called on us. Yeah.
And you wanted your dope.
Pretty much.
Did you pay for it?
I don't remember, probably. I was the only one that was really working, so I must have been paying for it.
Yeah, and you were always keeping yourself like good by keep making sure that you had enough for the next day.
I'd even keep like some Suboxone on deck too, just in case.
Yeah, I kept subs on me, but I was always weary of taking them because I was always so like, I'm gonna find pills. I'm gonna find pills. I'm gonna find pills. And I know as soon as I take this Suboxone, I'm gonna find pills, and I won't be able to do them.
Yeah, I mean, you could just take more Suboxone, I guess, and then wait till the next day. That's what I would do. That's what I would have done. And
there was no next day for me. Everything was next day JD's problem.
Yeah.
Like, if I had 8, I was doing all 8. There was no saving for the next day.
Yeah, no, I was frugal. I was frugal with my drugs for sure.
The only time I would save for the next day is if I was high on Xanax and passed out.
Yeah.
And then I'd wake up in the middle of the night and do a line and go back to bed again.
Oh my gosh, what a waste. What am I just go back to bed?
No, I would have to do a line if I was awake.
Oh, perks, crazy. Did you used to take like Benadryl too?
No.
I used to mix the Benadryl with my perks because it would just make me so itchy. So it helped. Plus, it helps like kind of make the drug even better.
I never even thought of the itchy part.
Yeah.
Nope, never even thought of that.
Hmm.
Where were you at 8 years ago? I haven't done a Roxy since April 24th, 2018.
Wow. Hell
That
yeah.
was the last time I did a Roxy. I've done other drugs since then. Um, I relapsed with benzos and like Valium.
Mm.
Um, and I relapsed with alcohol at one point, but I haven't had a drink in almost 5 years. So now you get arrested, and what were they charging you with?
They arrested me, charged me with possession and intent to distribute Class A and Class B substances, and they were trying to charge me with like an EBT card and like some guns and stuff, but those ones got dropped pretty quickly because I had no idea about them. But the intent to distribute was like the biggest thing because yeah, that's a felony. So I ended up going to rehab and that took off the felony, but I still have the misdemeanor of possession.
And so did they make you go to rehab, or did your family make you go to rehab, or did you want to go to rehab?
It was rehab or jail. So, another important thing that I probably should have mentioned is my dad was a private investigator for the county for like at least 20 years. And he was also a police officer, correctional officer. So like I was the last person to expect, I guess, to end up where I was. So my dad came up to court that day, and so did my stepmom. And because my dad like told the judge who he was and everything, my bail went from like 10,000 to like 1,000, and then I got the option. And I didn't want to go to jail. I didn't want to go to jail, so it was rehab. I didn't want to go to the rehab either, but definitely wasn't going to jail.
Now, and then you went to rehab in Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the place to go to rehab is Florida or Southern California.
Yeah. Well, I went to rehab. Technically, my rehab was in Massachusetts, so it was my detox center. Um, but once I was like almost finished with rehab, I thought I was going home after, and then my parents came and they were like, "Yeah, you are not coming back home. You are going to take the longest way possible until you're back in our house again." And they brought up the idea of halfway houses and outpatient and all of that. Um, and I said, okay, well, if I have to do all that, then like I want to go to Florida. And my reason behind wanting to go to Florida was because a guy I used to use with went to Florida, like all of a sudden. So I went down there to chase him. He ended up relapsing when he was down here because he was like court ordered to go down there like 4 months earlier than I'd gotten arrested. So I went down there to find him. He was still getting high, and I ended up staying sober.
Now, why do you think it worked for you?
Um, I had like no choice at all whatsoever. Um, I wasn't getting home. I had nowhere else to go. I was in Florida by myself, and I was actually 19, so I was going to be turning 20. Um, and yeah, I really just had no choice. And for the first like I was in rehab for a while. So probably about a month before I went to Florida. And the whole entire time I was in rehab, I was telling myself, like, as soon as I get out, like, I'm gonna go get high for sure. And that was before I knew I was going to Florida. So even in halfway houses, I still had this reservation in my head that I was gonna go and get high. But the more sober I was and the more time went on, had a bit more rational of thinking than maybe 6 months prior. And I realized, like, if I don't stay sober, I have literally nowhere to go. And a lot of the people that were relapsing ended up getting into the flop house traps. So I didn't want that either.
Now, were you getting introduced to any kind of program?
Yeah, we were in So we had to do our 90 and 90 with the outpatient program I was at. So I was going to the 90 meetings in 90 days. I got a sponsor. I was the worst sponsee ever. Worst sponsee ever. Like, I still to this day have not finished all 12 steps. And I want to. And I'm kind of not really, I don't really hold it against myself that I never did the 12 steps, because I was just so young and I was still learning like what was right and what was wrong. And I wasn't really sure of like anything at all. So I recently decided actually that I am going to start my 12 steps over again.
No, which fellowship? Like, I'm in NA, and then I do NA Monday through Friday at noon, and then I do Gamblers Anonymous on the weekends. I was going to AA for a while, but where I live in Pennsylvania, they don't let you talk about drugs in AA. Yeah. And my relapse was with drugs, not with, alcohol. So I needed NA more than I need AA.
We were just kind of taught to use the word alcohol instead of drugs for that situation. When I was because traditionally, I mean, you're not supposed to bring up drugs in an AA setting, but I don't know how things have changed. I know that this coast, I'm on the west coast of Florida now. I was on the East Coast for treatment. Here, it's a little bit more lackadaisical, it seems. I've talked to some people that go to meetings, and it is AA, but it's just not so revolved around the big book.
Yeah, so the problem with me confining my discussion to how it pertains to alcohol was in my last 2 years of my addiction, I was driving 2 hours to get pills each way. And I was doing that 4 to 5 times a week.
That's so much gas.
I had a gas card. I had a gas card through my work.
Wow. Oh, okay.
So
there you go.
The gas and the tolls were paid for. So I would drive about an hour and 45 minutes each way to get pills. And it's hard for me to say in my share to be like, so I was driving 2 hours to get alcohol because I couldn't find any local alcohol. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'd sound kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it sounds disingenuous. So, yeah, in Los Angeles, where I got clean and sober initially, I could talk about pills. I could talk about alcohol. I could talk about whatever I wanted in AA. So I went through the steps in AA, and then I had my relapse last summer, and that was with benzos, and that was with weed. And I was smoking weed all day, every day, and I was eating Valium like it was candy. And, then I started snorting my Valium because I'm addicted to snorting. So I started snorting my Valium, and, I liked the drip that it produced.
Definitely identify as an addict. Like, I'm addicted to work right now. Like, I just can't stop, to the point where I think I worked like 400, 500 days straight, like including holidays, like no days off. By the end of it, I was working like 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And then I burnt out, and it was it was just like rock bottom all over again, where it's just like my whole entire life is like spiraling out of control. Like, I can't think straight. I feel like I can't get anything done because I just overworked myself. Almost like it was literally, I was reaching out to like the people that I went to rehab with, like, oh my God, what should I do? I feel like I'm literally powerless. Like, oh my gosh, I worked so hard, didn't have a social life, just addicted to the grind, married to the game. Like, my whole mindset has been, since I moved to Florida for the second time, is like burnout over broke. It's the worst advice in the world. Worst advice.
Why? What do you do?
I'm a real estate agent, but I freelance business development, and I do graphic design as well, and marketing.
So you're staying busy then?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Now, why'd you go? So you went to Florida for rehab, like, or sober living, and then you went back to Massachusetts?
Yeah. So I went in 2016 to Massachusetts, to Florida for rehab, and then 2 years later, I went to Massachusetts again in 2018. Then I realized how much I did not like Massachusetts. I was like, no wonder why I did drugs. Like, you guys are horrible, absolutely horrible. So 2 years later, I moved back down in 2020.
During COVID?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like right before or during?
During. Didn't have to wear masks down here. There was freedom here.
Well, I'm glad that you're still clean because, with all the moves, and Florida is like relapse central.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. So I met this guy on a dating app like literally 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we hung out 3 times. It was great. It was so great. I told him I was in recovery. Like, he was like, "Oh, I'm in recovery too," and I was like, "Amazing! Like, we are a match made in heaven." But on the 3rd time I hung out with him, I learned that he was on meth, and he was like, "Well, that's not my drug of choice," and I'm like, "It's meth. It's literally meth. Like, what? First of all, why are you even using meth near me? Second of all, please like get help." It was just crazy. The people that use drugs here everywhere. I don't have any friends down here because I think the East Coast, there's more like successful people in recovery that have stayed sober, but here it seems like they all migrate over here when they don't stay clean because everyone is on drugs.
Yep. That's why I went to Los Angeles and not to Florida. Like when I decided I was ready to go to rehab, I had said to my mom, I found a rehab in California that I want to go to. And she was like, "Why not go to Florida? I heard everybody goes to Florida." I said, "That's the problem, is everybody goes to Florida. People relapse in Florida." I was like, "I don't want to know anybody. I want to go somewhere where nobody knows me."
Right. Yeah. And that's so true. Like, we are, at some point, Florida was recognized as like the recovery capital, but there's just as many relapses here for that reason. So it's dangerous here. There's really no other way to put it, especially for an addict.
And especially with like shady rehabs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I haven't heard so much about that lately. I know when I was getting clean, it was like everybody was pretty much a victim to the
rehab shuffle
cycle. Yeah, exactly. And I'm so grateful for the treatment center I went to. It was called a New Start. It doesn't exist anymore, but they had a really good structure and it was very legitimate.
Yeah, I went to high school with a guy that was doing that rehab shuffle, and like he owned a rehab that was doing it, and he was like, he made like $30 million doing it, and then he got caught, and now I'm pretty sure he's in jail, or he should be.
Right, definitely.
Like, he made all that money on people with, failing UAs, having them take urinalysis, and like, billing the insurance all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they made something like $30 or $50 million, something ridiculous.
Wow.
But they got raided. I had a guy on the show that was across the street. He knew the guy I'm talking about, and he was across the street at a motel when he watched them get raided.
Oh man. Wow.
It's a small world, especially in recovery. Like, I've been doing this for 3.5 years. So I wouldn't be surprised if, I add you on Facebook and see that we have mutual friends.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised either.
So, especially since, we both lived on the South Shore. And yeah, well, Mikayla, I appreciate your time tonight. I know you're always busy, so I'll let you relax. And thank you again for coming on here and telling your story.
Yeah, of course.
Have a good night.
Having me. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.